Most people who die after a nuclear event don't die from the blast. They don't even die from radiation poisoning in the way you might imagine. They die from mistakes, simple, preventable mistakes made in the first 72 hours by people who thought they were doing the right thing. A family drives towards safety and ends up exposed to lethal fallout on an empty highway. A father opens his door to help a neighbor and contaminates his entire shelter. A mother rations water so carefully that her daughter becomes too dehydrated to think clearly on day 2. These aren't hypothetical scenarios. They're patterns that emerge every single time disaster strikes, and people are forced to make life or death decisions with incomplete information and overwhelming fear. Today, we're going to walk through the most common fatal errors that happen in the first 3 days after a nuclear crisis, why smart, caring, capable people make them, and exactly how you can avoid becoming another statistic. Because surviving the blast is just the beginning. What you do in those first 72 hours determines whether you live to see day 4. Let's start with the single biggest killer in the first hour. And it's not what you think. It's not radiation. It's not the shockwave. It's indecision wrapped in denial. When every screen in your house lights up with that emergency alert, when the harsh tone cuts through your morning coffee and your phone buzzes with confirmed nuclear strike, your brain doesn't accept it. Not really, not at first. What happens instead is a cognitive loop that psychologists call normalcy bias. Your mind searches desperately for any explanation that allows the world to still make sense. It's a test. It's a hack. Someone made a mistake. The system glitched. This is the loophole your brain offers you, and it feels so convincing that thousands of people have stood at their windows, scrolling their phones, refreshing news sites, waiting for the retraction that never comes. Meanwhile, the clock is ticking. Every second you spend convincing yourself this isn't real is a second you're not moving to safety. Here's what makes this so deadly. The window between warning and impact, if there is any warning at all, is brutally short. If you're lucky, you have minutes. More likely, you have seconds to decide and act before the blast wave, the heat, or the initial burst of radiation reaches you. But even if you're far enough from the impact that you survive the initial event, you're now facing the fallout clock. Radioactive particles begin drifting down within 15 to 30 minutes, depending on wind, weather, and proximity. The longer you stay outside or near windows during that drift, the more exposure you accumulate. People who freeze in denial, who wait for clarity or permission or confirmation, often find themselves still standing in their kitchens or sitting in their cars when the real danger begins. The survivors are the ones who made a simple mental switch in those first seconds. They didn't wait to understand everything. They didn't need to see proof. They heard the alert, saw the reactions around them, and moved immediately to the safest available space. The lesson here isn't about being paranoid. It's about pre-deciding. Right now, before any crisis, you can make a deal with yourself. If I ever hear that alert, I don't debate. I don't investigate. I act. That decision made now in calm and clarity can override the denial reflex when you need it most. Once people do move, the second fatal mistake emerges almost immediately. It's the choice of where to go. When the sirens start and panic sets in, the instinct for many families is to run. Not to the basement or the center of their home, but out, away, somewhere else, anywhere but here. They picture their house as a trap and the open road as an escape. They think of relatives in another state, a cabin in the mountains, or even just distance from the city. So they grab their keys, load the kids, and join a wave of cars all making the same terrible choice. Within an hour, highways become parking lots. Families sit in traffic, fully exposed, with nowhere to hide as fallout begins to settle. They burn through their fuel, their water, their options. By the time they realize they should have stayed home, it's too late. The radiation dose they've accumulated sitting in gridlock is more than they would have received in 3 days inside their own house. This mistake is rooted in a misunderstanding of what kills you after a nuclear event. People imagine the explosion itself as the main threat. If you survive that, you think you just need to get away from the impact zone. But the blast radius is only part of the story. Fallout is the invisible, slow-moving threat that spreads far beyond the crater, carried by wind and weather. It doesn't respect city limits. It doesn't stop at state lines. And it's most dangerous in the first hours and days when the particles are fresh and intensely radioactive. Your best defense against fallout isn't distance, it's mass. Concrete, brick, earth, and layers of material between you and the sky. A basement in a suburban home can provide more protection than being 50 miles away on an exposed highway. Even an interior bathroom with no windows, surrounded by other rooms and walls, is vastly safer than being outside. The survivors understand this. They don't run unless they're in the immediate blast zone or under direct evacuation orders. They go inward, downward, and they stay put until they have real information. Now let's say you made the right call. You didn't freeze, you didn't flee. You got your family into the most protected space your home offers. You're in the basement or an interior room. The next fatal mistake happens in the first 30 to 60 minutes, and it's about what you didn't bring with you. People focus so much on getting to shelter that they forget shelter is only useful if you can survive inside it. You need water, you need food, you need light, information, first aid, and medications. But in the chaos of those first minutes, families rush to the basement and then realize they left everything upstairs. Now they face an agonizing choice. Do we go back up to grab supplies and risk exposure, or do we sit here with nothing and hope this is over quickly? Some people make multiple trips, running up and down stairs, each time cracking doors and breaking the seal they're trying to create. Others sit in the dark with no water, growing weaker and more desperate by the hour. Both paths lead to suffering that could have been avoided. The professionals, the people who think about this for a living, talk about the concept of sustainable shelter. It's not enough to have a safe room. That room has to be stocked or rapidly stockable. Ideally, you've thought about this before the crisis. You have some basics stored in or near your shelter space. Water in containers that won't degrade, food that doesn't need cooking, a battery radio, flashlights, a basic first aid kit, copies of important medications. If you don't have that prep done, then your first few minutes in the safe space should be organized chaos. One person stays with vulnerable family members in the shelter. Another moves quickly through the house, filling containers with tap water while it still flows, grabbing anything that doesn't spoil, pulling batteries and lights and medicines into a bag or box, then sealing back into the shelter. You do this fast. You do it once. Then you stay. The mistake is either doing it too slowly, exposing yourself for too long, or not doing it at all and thinking you can last on willpower alone. Here's another mistake that compounds in the first few hours. It's the information spiral. You're in your shelter. You have your phone. The battery is decent. You start scrolling. Social media is exploding. Videos that may or may not be real. Maps that may or may not be accurate. Friends posting conflicting reports. Someone says the entire East Coast is gone. Someone else insists it was a false alarm. Another person shares a thread about where the fallout is spreading, but the source is unclear. You feel a desperate need to know what's happening, so you keep scrolling, you click every link, you read every update, you argue in the comments, you call people who don't answer, you refresh the news. Meanwhile, your battery drains, your mind fractures, your family sees you spiraling, and their fear amplifies. Hours pass, and you haven't organized your supplies, checked on your kids, or made any decisions about what happens next. You've just consumed chaos. This mistake is subtle because gathering information feels responsible. It feels like you're taking control. But there's a difference between checking for official guidance and drowning in the noise. In a real crisis, most of what floods social media in the first hours is speculation, panic, and misinformation. Some of it is intentionally false. Some is just people guessing. Very little of it will help you make better decisions in your specific situation. The survivors treat information like a resource to be rationed. They check official channels, local emergency broadcasts, NOAA weather radio if they have one, government alert systems. They look for clear instructions, evacuate or shelter in place, which areas are affected, where aid is being set up. They take notes, then they put the phone down, they save the battery, they focus on the room they're in and the people they're with. If something critical changes, the alert systems will tell them. Everything else is noise. As the first day wears on, another pattern of fatal mistakes begins to emerge. It's about exposure management. People who did everything right, who got inside and stayed inside, start to second-guess themselves. They look outside and see that the street looks normal. No mushroom cloud visible. No obvious destruction. The neighbor's car is still in the driveway. It's quiet. Maybe it wasn't as bad as they thought. Maybe the danger is somewhere else. Maybe it's safe to step out for just a minute. Check the mailbox. Grab something from the car. Walk over to see if the neighbors are okay. This is the bargaining phase. Your mind wants relief from the tension of sheltering. It wants evidence that you overreacted so you can relax. And that desire can kill you. Because fallout is invisible. You can't see it, smell it, or feel it landing on your skin. By the time you realize you've been exposed to a dangerous dose, the damage is already happening inside your body at a cellular level. The rule that keeps people alive is simple but hard to follow. Assume the outside is contaminated until you have clear, official information that says otherwise. That might mean staying inside for 24 hours. It might mean 72. In some scenarios, it could mean longer. The decay curve of radioactive fallout works in your favor if you're patient. Radiation levels drop significantly in the first hours and days. Every hour you stay inside is an hour the danger outside is diminishing. But if you break shelter early, you're exposing yourself during the most dangerous window. You're also potentially bringing contamination inside with you on your clothes, your shoes, your skin. Once that happens, your shelter is compromised. Your family is at risk. The people who survive are the ones who can sit with discomfort and uncertainty. They don't need to know everything. They don't need to feel normal. They just need to stay put until they have a reason to move. Now let's talk about water, because this is where another fatal mistake quietly unfolds over the first 48 hours. You filled containers, you have some supply, but you're not sure how long this will last, so you ration aggressively. You give everyone a few sips in the morning and a few at night. You think you're being smart, you think you're stretching your resources, but by day 2, people are getting dehydrated. Headaches start, thinking gets foggy, someone's lips crack, a child is too tired to stay alert. Dehydration doesn't just make you uncomfortable, it impairs judgment, it weakens your immune system, it makes every other problem worse. And if someone gets sick, if there's vomiting or diarrhea in your shelter, dehydration becomes a medical emergency fast. The better approach is to drink what you need to stay functional, then adapt based on what you learn. The average person needs about 2 liters of water per day just for drinking. More if it's hot, if you're stressed, or if you're doing any physical work. That sounds like a lot when you're looking at a bathtub with 20 gallons and a family of 4. You do the math and panic, but you also have to consider that help is coming. Systems are mobilizing. In most scenarios, water distribution points, aid stations, or relief operations will be set up within 72 to 96 hours. If you ration so hard that people are impaired by day 2, you've made yourself less able to respond when opportunities or challenges arise. The survivors drink enough to think clearly. They note how much they have left. They make decisions day by day. And they don't assume the worst-case scenario is guaranteed. Here's a mistake that doesn't get talked about enough. It happens on day 2 or 3 when someone knocks on your door. Maybe it's a neighbor, maybe it's a stranger. They need water, they need food, they're scared, they want to come in, they want to know what you've heard, they want you to leave with them because they think there's safety somewhere else. Your instinct is to help. You're not a monster. These are human beings. But you also have limited resources and a responsibility to the people already in your care. Some people open the door wide, invite everyone in, and within hours their shelter is overcrowded, their supplies are dwindling, and tensions are rising. Others refuse all contact, turn people away, and live with the guilt and the risk that those people might come back angry or desperate. Both extremes are mistakes. The middle path requires judgment. You can crack a door, speak through it, and assess the situation without fully exposing yourself or letting someone into your space. You can share a small amount of water or food without giving away everything. You can tell someone what you heard on the radio without joining their plan to evacuate. You can check on a neighbor quickly, then return to your shelter. The key is that every interaction is a calculated risk. Does this action improve safety for my family, or just make me feel better about myself? If a neighbor 2 doors down has a medical emergency, and you have first aid training, helping them might be worth a brief, careful trip. If a stranger wants you to abandon your shelter and drive somewhere based on a rumor, that's a hard no. The survivors make these calls with clarity, not emotion. They help when it's smart. They protect their people when it's necessary. And they don't let guilt override survival. Let's talk about sleep, because this is a mistake that sneaks up on people around day 2. You've been running on adrenaline. Every sound makes you jump. You're checking your phone constantly. You're worried about what might happen next. So you stay awake. You keep watch. You don't trust that you can let your guard down. By the second night, you're exhausted. Your decision-making is impaired. You're irritable. You snap at your family. You miss important information because your brain is too fried to process it. Some people push through thinking sleep is a luxury they can't afford. Then they collapse at the worst possible moment or make a critical error because they're too tired to think straight. This is a mistake that turns a survivable situation into a tragedy. The survivors protect sleep like a resource. If there are multiple adults, they set up a watch rotation. One person stays lightly awake, listening for alerts or danger. The others rest. After a few hours, they switch. No one is a hero. No one tries to do it all. And during rest periods, they actually try to sleep. They lie down. They close their eyes. They let their body recover. It's not easy. The mind races. The fear is real, but even broken sleep is better than none. Even a few hours helps your body process stress and maintain cognitive function. If you're alone, you do your best. You set alarms to wake yourself for radio checks. You rest when you can. You accept that you won't feel normal, but you also don't let yourself spiral into total exhaustion. Because on day 3 or 4, something will require your full attention. A decision about whether to evacuate, a sick family member, a shift in the situation. If you're too tired to think, you can't respond. Another mistake surfaces around day 3, and it's about hygiene. People are sheltering in small spaces. Bathrooms might not be working. Toilets might not flush. Trash is piling up. Someone is sick. The smell is getting bad. It feels like a small problem compared to radiation and survival, so people ignore it. They think they'll deal with it later. But hygiene breakdowns lead to illness, stomach bugs, infections, rashes. In a normal situation, these are annoying. In a crisis where medical help is limited or non-existent, they can be life-threatening. A case of severe diarrhea in a child who's already dehydrated can go bad fast. An infected cut can become septic. The survivors take hygiene seriously from day 1. They set up a simple system. If the toilet works, they use it but flush sparingly. If it doesn't, they line a bucket with a garbage bag, use it, tie it off, and move it to a corner away from where they sleep and eat. They wash hands with water or sanitizer after bathroom use and before eating. They manage trash. They keep the space as clean as possible given the constraints. Here's a mistake that compounds all the others. It's the breakdown of group cohesion. You're sheltering with family or others. Everyone is scared. Space is tight. Resources are limited. Someone starts to crack. They withdraw. They fixate on one fear. They lash out. Arguments start. Blame gets thrown around. The group fractures. The survivors recognize this pattern and fight it actively. They establish simple roles. They set routines. They focus on what they can control. By the end of 72 hours, nothing magically returns to normal. The people who live are not the strongest or the luckiest. They are the ones who made better decisions when fear was loud and time was short. And now you know exactly what those decisions are.